So George Brauchler, Bungles, the James Holmes trial. He could not get the death penalty on James Holmes. He couldn't do it. And so, why did he not do it? He spent $3 million. He had 300 witnesses. He had 3,000 pieces of evidence. And he also got 12 life sentences. 12 life sentences were put on James Holmes. He was guilty of 24 counts of first-degree murder. He was guilty of 140 counts of attempted first-degree murder. 140 counts. And then 1 count of possessing illegal explosives. And then an enhancement charge of a crime of violence. So in addition to all the bloodshed and the carnage, he was also violent. Oh, the crime of violence, that was the important part. I think it was the legalese, making the jury sit there through all this shit. 300 witnesses, 3,000 pieces of evidence, and then the thing with the law is between first degree, second degree, you have to have intent. So in order to prove that he intended to murder people, you have to show that he's a competent person, and then you got to show that he intended to do it, right? So they add all this extra shit, but he intended to do it, he was competent, and he murdered a lot of people, including that 6-year-old girl. I think if I was a lawyer and all he did was just kill that one 6-year-old girl, I would have got, well, I mean, I guess I don't know the jurors, but I think I would have made a better case than what George Brauchler did. George Brauchler over-argued his case. Because he over-argued his case and they had all these stupid distinctions, 140 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 24 counts, he gets 12 life sentences, right? Just in case, what, 1 life sentence is enough? Now he's got to serve, what, 11 other people's lives, too? So, and then if you don't want, let's add on to the insanity. So he gets 12 life sentences, and then he gets 3,318 years for the attempted murders. So he gets 12 life sentences, 1 for each of the 1 people that he had murdered, plus 3,318 years for the attempted murders. We have gone into ridiculous fucking land here. We are so far ridiculous, it's not even fucking funny. So, 1 life sentence is enough. We need 12 life sentences, and then you only live to be about 80 years. So let's say he dies at 80 years of age. That means he still has 3,200 years of prison he needs to serve. 3,200 more years. 3,000 years. So it's 2017 right now. 2017. So add to 3,000 years. So James Holmes won't get out of prison until over 5,017. When it's 5,017, that's when James Holmes will be able to get out of prison. What the fuck are we doing here? What the fuck is all this extra shit? 12 lifetimes? You can only serve 1 fucking lifetime. 3,318 years? 3,000. He's not going to be in fucking prison for 3,000 years. What the fuck is he have 3,000 years on his fucking sentence? That doesn't help. That doesn't add anything. It doesn't give him any worse of a fucking sentence than if he killed 1 person and he got 1 life sentence. So I think he he just over-argued it. He over-argued it. He had all these weird distinctions. He's not a principled person, so he couldn't just get up there and be like, look, he shot that person, he needs to die. Eye for an eye, end of case, and then just sit right back down. Nah, he's got to get up there, he's got to be like, I'm George Brauchler, and I got this law degree and that law degree, and all these stuck-up professors made me shut up and sit down, and now I talk just like them. So that's how he bungled the James Holmes case. So the death penalty, they say in Colorado, is dead and gone now. Yeah, until George Brauchler becomes governor, he'll bring it back, and he'll be killing people left and right. So I wonder if he'll kill more people than James Holmes did. I wonder if he'll kill more people than Columbine did. They killed, what, 12, 13? So 25 total. What's he going to kill? Is he going to kill more? George Brauchler would be the most bloody governor that Colorado has ever had, if you're into that sort of thing. But he bungled up the fucking case. He bungled this case up. So let's just... this is what happens when you have a bunch of lawyers who muck up a bloated anti-justice judicial system. They should have had 1 sweeping terrorist charge. He didn't even get charged with terrorism, right? A crime of violence. Well, it was a crime of violence. Don't forget to add that charge, right, George Brauchler? Don't forget to add the charge of crime of violence. That was going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. That was going to get the jury to agree to a death penalty. Well, he murdered all them people, but it was violent. It was violent. It was a crime of violence. No, if anything, that makes it seem like it's fucking less than what it is. A crime of violence, you could just push somebody. That's a crime of violence, right? Violence happens. But what he did was more than just a crime of violence. It was a massacre. It was carnage. It was terrorism. So he should have been charged with a massacre. Should have been charged with carnage. You know, put those charges on him, terrorism. But instead, 300 witnesses later, 3,000 pieces of evidence, $3 million later, after he's done confused everybody and talked everybody's head off, then one lady says, nope, we're not going to give him the death penalty. So George could fuck over the poor and powerless all day long, throwing non-violent people into jail all day long, but when it comes time for him to nail mass murder to the fucking wall, he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. So how many lives has George Brauchler fucked over? How many non-violent people has he fucked over when it comes to the war on drugs? An eye for an eye is justice, but he's a fucking stuck-up, unprincipled, uppity bourgeoisie. Try tweeting him. If you're a regular registered Coloradan voter, he won't talk to you. He won't respond to you. Like Trump, he only cares about the 1%, not the 99%. So let's recap this whole thing. He bungled the James Holmes case. He didn't get the death penalty on him, even though he got 3,000 year sentence, 12 life sentences. And then he also accepted Ted Nugent's endorsement. Ted Nugent give him an endorsement. The famous child molester, the famous Chomo. Chomo. He is a Chomo. 12-year-old Courtney Love said she gave him a blowjob. And then he sings about it in his song. And then Jailbait, he's got a song called Jailbait where he's having sex with a 13-year-old. And then the cop comes to arrest him. And he's like, hey, no, officer, let's go ahead and tag team her. That's who the fuck he is. And then when he was doing an interview, I think with High Times, so he's sitting there saying that Colorado is going into this anti-American tailspin. Why? Because pot is legalized here. He's talking to High Times. So he's this rocker, drunk, doing all these drugs, all this fucking 60s and 70s. And then they asked him about, you know, the 13-year-olds. He became a guardian to that 17-year-old, but the 13-year-olds, the Jailbait song is singing about the 13-year-olds. That's who he is specifically targeting, the 13-year-olds. So they're not babies, they would be the tweenies, right, as the fucking great Alex Jones, what he had said. So he's, you know, going after, they're kids, they're still kids, 13, 12, they're children, and he is going after, he's sitting there singing about having sex with them as a fun little thing, Jailbait, going all across the country talking about having sex with children. It's such an awesome song, he's rocking out. And then at this High Times interview, he sits there and he says that it was beautiful. He's like, God, I was addicted to girls. I was addicted to girls, and it was beautiful. Not only is it not beautiful, it's disgusting, it's ugly, it's nasty, you're fucking nasty, Ted Nugent, you're fucking nasty, but it's criminal, it's criminal. And he's going around singing and bragging about it, and he got away with this shit. He got away with this shit, and now he's this big political commentator. He says, everybody vote for George Brauchler, and then George Brauchler gives him a big old hug. And then he wants to sit there and brag about George Brauchler's pro-Second Amendment bona fides when he's not pro-Second Amendment. He went after one of the gun salesmen of the Columbine shooters case. Only one of them. He didn't go after any of the other gun salesmen of the Aurora shooter. He didn't go after the James Taylor who sold him his gun. He didn't go after Eric Harris. All the people that gave Eric Harris his guns, none of those people went to jail. None of those people who bought the guns or arranged the meeting. But he went after Marky Maines for giving the Tech 9, for selling the Tech 9 for $500 to Klebold. And then he went after Philip Duran for organizing that meeting. That's all Philip Duran did. Philip Duran goes to jail for 4.5 years for organizing a meeting for one of the Columbine shooters to get one of his guns. Meanwhile, Robin Anderson bought the other gun for Klebold, and then bought both of Eric Harris's guns, and she didn't get in any trouble whatsoever. So it's hugely inconsistent. He's a total fucking hypocrite. He has no principles. He's an opportunist. He was an opportunist when he went after Marky Maines. He was an opportunist when he went after Philip Duran, and he's an opportunist right now when he embraces Ted Nugent's endorsement. George Brauchler is an opportunist, and his Aurora shooting and Columbine shooting, his record on those things, he's not bona fide pro Second Amendment. He does not believe in the Second Amendment as a principle. If he could fuck you over somehow, and it has to do with the Second Amendment, he's totally fine with it because he already did it. He did it with Mark E. Maines, and he did it with Philip Duran, who didn't even handle a single gun. Philip Duran didn't have, well, he had an illegal gun, but that had nothing to do with the Columbine shooters, nothing to do with interacting with them, nothing to do with meeting, you know, the meeting of the nature. The reason why Philip Duran goes to jail for 4.5 years, because he arranged the meeting for that Tech 9, for Dylan Klebold to get that Tech 9. So, yeah, his Second Amendment bona fides are fucked up. He's opportunist. Why he would embrace Ted Nugent, I don't know. I guess Sarah Palin, Sean Hannity, and Donald Trump embrace him, so fuck it, right? If a bunch of power brokers are hobnobbing with a child molester, I guess George Brauchler is just going to get in line, right? He's just going to conform to his Republican conservative buddies' fucking sickness. Well, they're all sick too, so I'll join the sickness. He was ecstatic. He was standing beside himself. George Brauchler is hobnobbing with child molesters. And I hope he's not rocking out the jailbait. I hope he isn't just like Ted Nugent. I'd like to think that he's a different kind of person than Ted Nugent, but he seems to be not only forgiving Ted's indiscretions, but embracing him 100%. I don't know. That's seems risky and stupid and immoral and what the fuck. I think it's really stupid for him to do that. So yeah, he's not Second Amendment. Ted Nugent he's a piece of shit and he's stupid, but he's 12 years old. Courtney Love said she gave him a blowjob when she was 12 years old. He said it was beautiful. It's not beautiful, Ted. It's fucking nasty. It's fucking nasty and criminal. So, if anything, I will, fuck Ted Nugent. Fuck Ted Nugent. They want to sit there and hobnob with this piece of shit like he's somebody good. He's not a good person. He's a fucking Jared Fogle. And fuck Ted Nugent. And fuck George Brauchler for liking Ted Nugent. Like, that was a good... Get some fucking morals, Ted. Get some morals, fucking George. That's pretty bad if I can't see the difference between you two. He's an arrogant, uppity, bourgeoisie piece of shit. Of course he don't have principles. What am I saying? Why would I assume George Brauchler had any principles? So yeah. You know what he can't do? He couldn't put a crime of violence on any of the non-violent drug offenders. But I'm sure he'd figure out a way to fuck him over too. So, okay. John Masters. Peace.